Okay, hello people. Good afternoon if you are in the United States, right? Yes, even those in the Pacific time zone are in the afternoon already. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm going to be talking about the role of culture when it comes to helping victims and survivors of human trafficking and domestic violence. I actually did a pre actually a blog on this a couple of days ago, March 26th. As you can see the date on the blog I'm showing you, this is the title of the blog on my website, and I just want to talk a little bit more about culture and how to help victims and survivors. And also I want to talk to you about Freedom Network conference coming up this weekend. You are invited. And then let's get started. Thank you for joining. I don't see who is joining. I just see numbers. Found out that Periscope has been having, if the issue is still on or not, or whether it's from my end, but a lot of people have been complaining about Periscope issues. So good afternoon. My name is Bukola Oriola and I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm an advocate, I'm an entrepreneur, and I am a survivor also, a survivor of domestic violence and human trafficking in the United States. I'm a survivor of labor trafficking, for clarification. And today I want to talk about culture. So as you can see today, I purposely put on this dress because this is African print. That's what it's called. It's called an African print, and this particular one came directly from Nigeria, and it's been a couple of years old now. So I want to talk about culture, and it's very, very important when providing service or in the process of helping somebody that is a survivor of human trafficking or a survivor of domestic violence, even a survivor of sexual assault. Understanding the culture that the person comes from is very important, and putting into consideration the traditions and cultural practices from the person's upbringing, background. It's really, really important to understand these cultural nuances for you to be able to effectively provide services, or for you to be able to effectively help somebody who is a survivor or who is a victim. Please let me know where you are joining me from, and I would like to hear also from you about your own culture, because we all have our different cultures. We have our various differences. There are some things that are even practiced in our communities that we do not, we don't talk about it. It's just normal. It's just, this is how we behave in our community, or this is the general belief in the community. So I would like to hear some of those from you, those of you joining me, and thank you for joining me on this broadcast today. So I will start from my own culture, because I did this little blog article. Growing up, I grew up in a family of, if you count just the children, 6 children and 2 parents, my mom and my dad. And, growing up, if you look at me very well, let me get close to the camera, you will see that I have what some people we call tribal marks. So this, straight lines on my face. In some cultures in Nigeria, that is their tribal mark. And tribal mark in Nigeria is a form of identification. Not just identification for your name, because you are given a name, but identification of your clan, of your roots, of your family heritage, if you would. And there are all other reasons why people have such marks beyond for identification purposes. Like in the olden days, back in Nigeria, for example, in my tribe, where there used to be wars, like clan wars, there used to be wars. And in those days too, you know what warriors do? I understand from learning about my culture and learning about my heritage, from my parents and grandparents, and understand that sometimes warriors, there are some names, like when you mention a name, the people know what that name is. They know the root of that name. They know what the ancestors used to do as their trade. So some of them, for example, are warriors. And these warriors, when they capture their slaves, they give them marks. And that marks kind of puts an identity on them beyond their name. Meaning, this person now belongs to us, or this person is now this person's property or slave in the olden days. And then also there are some people who put on the marks on their kids, on their families, not because they were trapped away in war, but because in case they get trapped in war, or in case, something happened and everybody dispersed, like how we have now, with refugee because of war and people having to leave their countries and finding refuge in other countries, even asylum seekers, which is, for asylum seekers, most of the time they can't even get a lot of help. So, in those days, they put tribal marks on their people, on their family, for identification purpose, just so they know that, okay, this person belongs to our clan, or this person belongs to this root, or this person belongs to this family. So that when the person grows up, or when the person goes out to other places, or when the person gets lost, they're able to use that to trace the person back. In those days, there was no GPS. In those days, there was no computer. In those days, there was no telephone to call. Even I remember growing up with, only see telephone on the phone, on TV. Or when I go to an office, I see telephone. We didn't have telephone at home. I remember my dad brought in, one of those old telephones, but it wasn't working. It wasn't connected. It was just for us to touch telephone and see telephone. So, you cannot imagine in the olden days where they don't have anything of such. The only way of communication, even sometimes people want to go to market to buy wholesale stuff, and they have to travel miles on foot, or travel miles on horses, or on donkeys, for places where they have donkeys, to be able to get to the next town and bring stuff back to them. And I tell you, even though we are in 2016, even though there are so many things like in cultural heritage that have been kind of lost or are no longer practiced, there are still some cultural beliefs that are being practiced up to today in some communities, in some cultures. For example, in my culture, there are still some people where they call it orole. Orole means the ritual of the clan or the ritual of the family, where they have to do some rites. They have to perform some, cultural stuff in that family. And there are some where, it's kind of really, really something of that culture that they do, even in 2016. And there are people still cutting their kids' faces. There are people still cutting their faces. And there are marks in people's bodies, apart from their faces, that clothes are covering. So there is all of this in somebody's, heritage, or in somebody's culture, or that the person believes in, that the person is coming with. And in a country like in the United States, where there are so many culture, I'd say that the United States is like the richest country in the world when it comes to culture, because there are so many people in the United States from all over the world. For example, I go to the United States and I'm able to eat Latino food, I'm able to eat Asian food, and even though for Asian, for example, I call Chinese, I found out that, not all of them are Chinese, even though some of them broke away from China or are part of Chinese, but they want to keep their own clan. We have the Hmong, we have the Vietnamese, we have the Laos, we have, Japanese, we have all different, Thailand, we have all, these different people who have their own, community within the large community. And you can imagine now coming to a place where it's even more diverse with, a lot of other communities. For example, some people will say Africa. Even I'm guilty of that, because, you say, oh, I'm going to Africa, or I went to Africa. Meanwhile, Africa is a continent. Africa is not a country. And even Nigeria as a country in Africa has over 400 dialects. And beyond that, even though the country's languages have been divided into 3 main languages, like when you go into school, the national language is English. However, you can also do the Nigerian languages. So it's Hausa, Yoruba, or Igbo. And it's written as Igbo, I-G-B-O, but most of the time we call it Igbo, but it's actually Igbo. And all these people within the community, there are also communities that are broken down within that community, where among the Yorubas, there are all different kinds of dialects that people speak. I don't understand some of those dialects when they are speaking, because the Yoruba that I know is the plain Yoruba, and the Yoruba that you can use to write and read. I do not understand all of the dialects. And trust me, when some of the people are speaking, I'm lost. Even though we are from the same tribe. We have been categorized as the same tribe. You cannot imagine the complexity of providing services to people who come from a community within another community. And it's very, very important to be able to understand all these differences. It's good to be able to learn how not to just assume and kind of model everybody together. For example, Liberians, I don't understand their dialect, even though they are Africans. Okay, which one is the closest to us? Benin Republic. In Benin Republic, I have never been there, because even though it shares border with Nigeria, and I'm in Lagos, and their border is by Lagos, I have never been there. And even though I understand that they speak Yoruba, which is my tribal language in Benin Republic, the way they speak it is also slightly different than the way that I know the language. You can imagine that, and then imagine how many people you are going to be providing services for, and how to understand when culture is playing in. There are so many things, and there are some things also in culture where it's for good, but sometimes people use it for bad. For example, in my culture, it's a sign of respect when a lady kneels down to greet. Actually, that's the way greeting is in my tribe, you kneel down with both of your knees on the ground to say good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, or welcome. And for the men, they prostrate, meaning they lie down on their chest to greet. But unfortunately, the same, cultural practice that was created for good intention has also been exploited by people from the culture and people that are not from the culture. So now, how have they exploited that? Because also kneeling down is a form of punishment. They use it as a form of punishment. So, can you see the difference in, this one thing and how it can be used for good and how it can be used for bad? And understanding that when providing services to a victim of domestic violence from their community or a victim of human trafficking from that community. And that is why sometimes you will not see a victim reaching out for help. I went on a ride along recently, and the police said, for example, they see a lot of culture, they see in fact all the cultures in their worst, meaning when something bad is happening, when there is domestic violence going on, when there is crime going on, when there is human trafficking, perhaps they might not even be able to identify because it's in homes, and there are so many victims who are trapped in homes that we look at from the outside that look like brand new homes, or actual brand new homes, or homes that we look at from the outside like a very nice house, mansion, big house. But do you know that in some of those houses are trapped victims of domestic violence or victims of human trafficking? And it's really, really important. A case broke out in was it Dallas? In Texas, Houston, not too long ago. And I talked about it here, the housemaid story, where even when like neighbors were questioned by reporters, I think I read the neighbor saying, during festive period, the family brings food, they share food with the neighbors and all that. Yet, this same family was not sharing food with their maid, their employee. Instead, they were making her to drink strained milk, according to reports, from their children's cereal. And going out, giving food to the neighbors is one of the cultural practices, especially during festive period, because I think I read in that report that somebody said they bring food during New Year's or something like that. So one of the cultural practices, for example, in my country is that during festive period, whether it's the Christian, festive period like Christmas and Easter, or is the Muslim festive period during the Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Malud, or whichever one they're celebrating. The New Year is kind of 50-50, so everybody celebrates New Year. Do you know that during this festive period, one of the cultural practices is that they take food? So, for example, on Christmas Day, my house alone can get food from like 10 people. And I also, from my family, will send food out to our neighbors, to our friends. And we, pack it nicely in dishes or even pirates, and, cover it nicely with, nice napkin. That is when you bring out the best of what you have to serve your friend or your neighbor. And that is one of our cultural practices, which is, different from the United States, because during Christmas, it's all about sharing gifts, giving gifts to people who don't have, or sharing gifts with families and all that. But for us, it's not about the gift, it's about the food. The gift you are getting on Christmas is new dress to wear for Christmas. And in fact, there are families where it's not just new dress, but everybody, like this dress I have on, everybody is having the same uniform. So the parents, the kids, or sometimes the parents will have something, they have their own, and the kids will have their own. That is, one of the cultural practices that I grew up with. And for children, they're always looking forward to that. That, it's Christmas is coming. They've been choosing, I want, this, or I want this shoe, because that's the time that, you get this new dress specifically. That new dress is specifically for that celebration. So there are so many things to be learned about culture, and it's really, really important not to assume, regardless of who you are working with. Let me do a quick introduction again. My name is Bukola Oriola, and this is my Periscope channel. It's called Bukola Periscope Videos, and you can follow me. Please share my scope with your friends. If you are watching the replay, thank you for coming in to watch the replay. You can share the video with your friends. I'm Bukola Oriola, and you can come to my website and subscribe to get updates from me. Every week I send out an email to my mailing list about my work on what I'm doing on human trafficking and domestic violence issues, and sometimes my message is on helping survivors beyond services that are available, like getting you help from your trafficker to getting you to safety. After that, what is next? There is need for empowerment. So I do that, and you can see my sign that I put this up for you guys to be able to see. And this is my website, Bukola Oriola, and you can follow me on Periscope. I'm Bukola Oriola, and you can subscribe for gifts, because in May I'm planning to do giveaways in May. So if you join my mailing list, you might be one of the winners of the gift that I'll be giving away in May. So I'm a speaker, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an advocate, and I also work on human trafficking issues and domestic violence, because I'm also a survivor. So back to the cultural issue, the role that culture plays, understanding culture, from the different cultures that people come from, is really, really important to understand the culture. And also, before I go, I want to invite you to come to the Freedom Network Conference. It's a conference that I think this is the 14th or the 15th one. I'm not sure, but it's if you go on their website, it's called Freedom Network Conference. And I'm going to be in 2 panels. One of them is talking specifically about, culture. And people will be learning about how to be more aware of other people's cultures without working on assumptions. Assumptions can take us all to nowhere. But when we understand the culture that people are coming from, it helps us to provide effective service to those people that we are working with. And also how to recognize language. We all speak different languages. Even within a country, there are people within one country speaking all different kinds of languages within that one country. So it's really, really, really important to learn about these people, about their culture, about how to provide effective services to help those people that we are providing services to. And, for immigrants, if your client happens to be an immigrant, or you come in contact with a victim that is an immigrant, sometimes one of the help that victim needs is immigration help. So how do you understand how to file if the appropriate visa type for that person? Because sometimes, law firms have good intentions, but when they file the wrong visa type, instead of helping the client, they're making the matter worse. So it's really, really important to understand all these different practices, and the implication of when a victim doesn't want to talk, or when a victim doesn't want to share about their abuser or about their trafficker. Is beyond that trafficker, is beyond that abuser. It's more of the whole community, where in some cases it's a community where the victim do not really have a voice in the community. It's a community where the victim will be blamed and blamed and blamed, and be finding all the different reasons why the victim is at fault. So how do you understand this? It's really, really important. It's by learning more about that community, learning more about that culture, that you can effectively provide services to the people from all the different cultures that you work with. Like I said with the police officer, he has said that, the Asian women, they're very quiet. So perhaps it's similar to the African community, where they don't want to talk. They're trying to protect the abuser or the trafficker. Why? It's not because of only that trafficker, but because of the entire community that we turn against them. And trust me, when you are in a community, it's hard to feel unaccepted. It's hard to be going through stigma in your own community, where you are supposed to be getting support and supposed to be getting help. Instead, it's stigma you are getting. It's people blaming you. It's even your own family saying, what is wrong with you? You should be. Thank you for joining Hill Mobile. Thanks. Please share with your friends and let me know about your community. What are the cultural practices, or how can someone understand your own community? Which community do you come from? Thank you for the love. Thanks. Which community do you come from? Because today I'm talking about understanding cultures. We all have our different cultures. We all have, even within a culture, there are also smaller cultures in a culture. And beyond that, from Union, New Jersey. Is that Niamo? Did I say it right? Niamo? Thank you so much. So, do you guys have thanks. Do you guys have like a cultural practice in New Jersey? Because I'm talking about culture and understanding. No, you see, can you tell us at least one cultural practice that might not even be popular, that people don't really know about, happens in your culture? Because we all have our different cultures, we have our different practices, and there are some things that